What is up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. This is the week one recap show. I'm here with my co-host, Ian Gibson. How are you, Ian?
I'm doing good. That was a lot of football in a short amount of time, so still recovering from yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it's been since Thursday, and obviously we're wearing our victory green here on Sunday, and we'll get into that. But yeah, it's a ton of great games. There were mainly close games out of all the big games, so there was no real like blowouts, which was nice because it made it exciting. You tuned in, almost every single one of them was a riveting game all the way through. I couldn't have asked for any more. We've got a couple more games today, South Carolina and Va Tech in a little bit, and then Miami Notre Dame tonight, and then tomorrow is TCU North Carolina. So we'll talk about those three on Wednesday as we do the preview show. But let's jump into it. First game, starting off the week. I was literally flying from Mexico, from Cancun, and I got to watch almost the entirety of the game on my phone because I had the Wi-Fi on the flight. And man, what a just amazing game by USF. I mean, in the beginning, the first quarter, it didn't look great, but I'm talking like that second that Byram hit the long throw to Chaz Nimrod at the end of the first quarter, it like just the rest of the game flipped. Like Boise State was up 7-0. USF was like doing nothing for like 3 drives, and they like had a fourth down that they couldn't convert, and Boise State converted, made a touchdown out of it, and then USF just looked listless, and I was like, man, are we going to get beat here? And then just they turned it on, and they really played extremely well. The defense, man, the guy that's like stood out the most besides linebackers Schuler and Harris was DeClona. Yep. I mean, that kid was all over the field, just making plays left and right, just great run fits, just staying where he needed to be and like making the play. Did not give up big yards to Boise, did not let them get in the game, and, made plays in the passing game as well. Just, dude, the kid already proved his worth in one game. We have 11 games to go, and he's just looking amazing. I mean, I was blown away by Byram too. Like, considering he was hurt last year, to come back this year, and, everyone was worried, like, he's dealt with injuries, whatever, and he looked like 2023 Byram.
Yeah.
And maybe even better because this was his best victory out of his entire 2 years as a starter. And like he looked way better than Madsen did on the other side. And, I don't know. It's just at this point now, it's like the playoffs are a potential. The like 8 American Conference Championship game is a potential. Like literally everything is unimaginable, which is like amazing to see where they've come from just 3 years ago winning one game. And it's like, man, it's just I'm so happy for this school. I'm so happy for the players. I'm so happy for Coach Golish. Like proud alum. I really am. Like it's amazing. I love the Florida Gators, but like, man, it makes me so proud to see USF come up because I've been there since the beginning, like literally an OG fan, like watching the games on Channel 44 when like they were playing like nobodies. And, to be at this point now to beating a very competent, solid program in Boise State and looking like potentially being one of the big programs this year. And I don't know, man. It's an amazing feeling. I'm really stoked for the future. The OCS is coming. Like it's like literally this is what they thought it could be. Like everyone was like the potential of what was going on. It's like Golish is a good coach, great offensive mind. The defense just needs to turn around. And I even myself, I said that Todd Orlando needed to prove it in this game. And boy, did he ever. Like those transfers that came in really proved it, really were stout. The D-line was amazing. Just all around amazing game by the defense. I would say a grade out, like just my personal grade for them, was an A+. It wasn't, there were some little things, but like honestly, they just played an amazing game, and the offense. And I want to speak about it before I give you a shot, but that fake punt, man, that was like a thing of beauty to put in Hewlett. They didn't know, like they had no idea, because I think he can punt.
We didn't know either. Yeah, we didn't know either.
Yeah.
We were just like, did the punter make that throw? And then we saw it was a different number.
Yeah.
We were like, that's a really good throw.
Yeah, that was a stellar throw. And Singleton, amazing catch and amazing, even better run after the catch, because he could have got tackled, but he kept it going and was able to get free there. And, God, that changed everything at that point, because it was a 10-7 game. Boise State was getting the ball back, and then it made it to a 2-score game, and USF just poured it on from there. The run game looked really solid. Like I said, Byram had 200 yards passing, and then they had 117 rush yards. A lot of those rush yards came on that one play near the end. So it wasn't as great of a running attack as probably USF would have wanted, but it was still effective. Byram looked great running the ball.
Yeah.
He had that one touchdown that got called back that should have been let go, the holding, but they called it. And so it brought back a 40-yard run. That was a stellar run. That would have been huge top 10 play. And even the punt, the fake punt was the number one play on the top plays that night. So that was great. Your thoughts, Ian, because I've been talking a lot here.
So, speaking from someone who was actually there, I mean this way, that was one of the best wins I have seen in person in a long time watching USF. That was because we both predicted, at least I did. I thought Boise State would, kind of have their way with USF towards the end, but they did exactly what I said they had to do. They had to get Matson to throw the ball, and they did. And the running game was held in check. They only averaged 3 yards per carry, so they made it a point of emphasis, especially from the linebacker. Schuler was in the backfield almost the whole game. They made it a point of emphasis. Check on that running back and they were telling Matson, beat us. And while Matson was able to get passes, and I will say this too, full disclosure, there were times USF did get pretty lucky. Either it was overthrown, drop passes, where guys were open, so there were some busted coverages. But regardless, they got to him. And the bread and butter of Boise State of ground and pound was taken out, and they had to play essentially since halftime just throwing the ball, and that's not what they're used to. That's not what their program has really traditionally been. So it was an excellent job to take them out of their game. But I agree, too. Like, at the beginning of the game, you could have probably heard all of Raymond James Stadium. You could probably heard me on the TV just groaning at the offense, because I was like, we've had the ball like 2 times and maybe 9 yards total. And then, he hit the deep pass to Nimrod. I jokingly said to my uncle, I go, look at that. We got a first down. It took us the whole quarter, but we got a first down. Yeah. Oh, man, if I only knew what was coming after that. The one thing I would say, too, that I hope the offense continues on is Byram needs to have the progression of 3 seconds in the pocket, and if you don't find your guy, run.
Yeah, let it go. Let it go or run. Yeah, he needs to just figure something out. He can't stall in the pocket like that. Yeah, because he took too many sacks. It's not going to end well against good teams.
But the good thing is with Byram is that with an offensive line like that, like we knew the O-line wasn't going to be world beaters. So if they are getting pushed around like that, Byram needs to be like, okay, I can't make this pass right now. I need to run. He needs to stop looking for the pass, just run. And we literally saw the whole game that he's got no problem taking off, and especially taking a hit. He was looking for contact most of those times when he was tucking and running. But I will say what I am most impressed in is the defense. That was the best defensive performance under Golish, bar none. And I know like they shut out Syracuse in the Boca Raton Bowl, but they literally had like a tight end as quarterback.
Yeah.
So for me, this was their best defensive performance. They held last year's playoff team in the hopeful out of the group of 5 to 1 touchdown from the first quarter on a 4th down conversion. They didn't really let them get any big plays until it was like, it got to like, the do or die time where they had to be throwing it deep. Just like with you, proud alum as well. I was technically that was my first game since I graduated. So that was my first alumni game. So it started off good. Just super impressed with the team. Hopefully it carries over. Like I said, I've told you and I told everybody, the first couple games, these non-conference games, as a USF fan, getting this win is huge. But now this gives me more confidence going into conference play. Like, Florida, Miami, I want to see how they do against those. But going into conference, I was like, if we play like that, defense especially, there's nobody in the American that can beat us. If we play like that defensively.
Yeah.
And I saw Tulane. Tulane had an amazing game against Northwestern. Yeah. Same with Memphis. But I was still thinking, like, we could go toe-to-toe with them if we play like we did against Boise State. So, sending the same things you are. Fantastic win. Really program defining. It's the biggest win. It's the first win against a ranked team since 2016 against Navy. So it's been a long time coming. I will say I did not rush to the field on like the other students because that's about a 5-10 foot drop from Raymond James, and I really didn't want to break my leg. That would have been a really tough discussion coming home to the wife. Like, what's wrong with your leg? Rush the field.
Broke my leg at the football game.
Yeah. That would have been a tough one to get away with. So, but it was great to see just because this is a program just, dying for consistency and, for success that they have had history with and they're trying to get back to. And this is a great first step.
Yeah. And I say the defense was Jim Levitt-esque. It was reminiscent of those days where the defense was ferocious. They swarmed the ball. They were, active linebackers, a D-line that was getting to the quarterback. The last several years, the defense has been so subpar. I mean, we talked about it in the preview about how, they were like 115 and then 119 the last 2 years. This is definitely not the same defense that it was the last 2 years under Golish. This seems like a renewed energy, a renewed purpose. They seem like they're ready to really like take off and to make a statement. And that was this game. This was a statement win. This is a statement win for the program, statement win for the defense, and a statement win for Byron Brown's Heisman chances. Because if he keeps going at this rate, having really good games, and he's going to have a couple against some of these lower American teams where he's going to blow them out and he's going to put up 400 yards passing. He's going to put up numbers, and it's exciting. It really is. This is what we kind of thought this was the trajectory for Alex Golish. Like, it seemed like it was possible. It just really, like I said, when it was the defense, if Todd Orlando could figure out the defense, then this team was going to turn the page and really start to win and really start to, make people take note. But just a heck of a win. I'm so proud, and I can't wait for next week. We're going to talk about that on Wednesday. I am going, and I know Ian's going to be there, and we'll get some coverage or whatever. I know I'm going to get some my camera out. I'm going to get some footage. Probably go to a bunch of the tailgates for both USF and Florida fans. But let's move on to the next game, which I had. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say, Nico Grammatica, just such a breath of fresh air with his tremendous leg and his accuracy. So that's another thing that, USF has in their back pocket, that if the drives stall, he can hit a 50-plus yarder, and, it's not going to be that big of a deal. So let's move on to another game from Thursday, Elon versus Duke. I'm not going to talk about this one long. Duke's defense looked pretty good. They were settling for field goals early, and then Mensa just took off. He looked amazing in this game. I think he had, close to 400 yards. I think that's the most yards he's ever thrown for. 3 TDs. Yeah, they were slow at first, but then they really took off. I think Mensa's probably the best arm talent that Duke has had in a while. I know Daniel Jones was there, but I don't know. I just never was sold on Daniel Jones. I just think Mensa has got something there, and with a defense that Manny Ramirez has, Duke could be dangerous in the ACC. Any thoughts on this before we move on?
For me, it wasn't the most encouraging thing going into halftime, tied 10-10 against Elon. But yeah, Mensa just went absolutely off. He was like, okay, well, if we're tied, I guess I'll, win it myself. He had, I think it was 3 touchdowns in the second half alone. And he almost threw for 400 yards, and it was just an air raid assault, which we're not really used to seeing from Duke, but it was a very good start. Very good game. Again, it's against Elon, but they were able to, compose themselves. They didn't fall into the trap, and just blew the doors off the hinges in the second half.
Okay, moving on. Very competitive game. I didn't get to watch it because we were my flight was into LAX, had to go through customs and everything. And then my in-laws picked us up, drove us to their place in Downey so that we could get our car and our dog and then drive back all the way to Long Beach. So it was all in all, from the moment I touched down after the USF game ended till we got home, it literally the Nebraska game ended as we got home. So I didn't really get to watch the whole game at all. I did watch the 15-minute recap highlight package. I know people are very critical of Dylan Raiola and, 33 completions and the yardage being 243 yards is not great. It looks like a lot of checkdowns, but I will say in the 3 or 4 big time throws I saw him do, it looked right on the money. And it was spots where only the receiver was going to catch it. And there were really high-end NFL throws. So I know people are critical of him. And, he's obviously got his infatuation with Patrick Mahomes, whatever. He is, a very talented quarterback. And I think he's starting to grow into it a little bit. He's only a sophomore. So I think we'll really see him blossom maybe next year as well. But it's a good start. Being Cincinnati is a Big 12 team. Probably not a good Big 12 team, but it is a solid victory. It's not a cupcake. They were tested. Cincinnati had the ball with a chance to win, tie potentially if they just go for the field goal instead of that long throw to the end zone that got picked off. But Cincinnati, outside of a bunch of QB runs, didn't look that great. I felt Nebraska was the better team for most of this game. And I don't know, your thoughts on this, Ian?
With Nebraska in this one, it was kind of an old school defensive showcase, because the only way Cincy was really going to be able to penetrate Nebraska's defense was to run, quarterback runs, option plays, RPOs, that kind of stuff. And Nebraska wasn't buying any of it. They weren't taking the bait at all.
Yeah.
I feel like the score is misleading because Nebraska was really controlling this game. They just could not punch it into the end zone. And that is something that they are going to have to – this has been a problem since last year, is their red zone efficiency. They're going to have to find a way to get, 6 points in those chances because, you may be okay against Cincinnati, but when you're playing teams like Michigan and USC and then Ohio State, you're not going to get those breaks. Yeah. So – for them, I will say Dylan Raiola, there's, everybody likes dropping an elbow on him and all that, but 33 completions is still pretty good. Yes, they were checkdowns and for the most part, but that's more than some quarterbacks, week one could say, Manning. So I would say all in all, Nebraska was a good defensive performance. Obviously, the offense there is, especially in the passing game, much more to see because that's kind of been what the focus has been, especially with Matt Rule. The running attack did have over 100 yards, so that was at least a good fallback for them. it's at least good to know that the defense was still stout, very good at, holding the attack from Cincinnati, and they weren't buying any of the RPO plays.
Yeah, I don't know. My takeaway from this game is I feel like Nebraska is a potential 9-win team. And, this defense looked great as far as Nebraska goes. So that will travel well for the rest of the year. If Raiola can just eliminate mistakes, which he didn't have any turnovers this game, which was huge, they have a real shot at 9 wins. Their schedule is kind of tough, like with the games you mentioned. So we'll see with them. But let's move on to Auburn Baylor on Friday. Man, I didn't watch this game because I watched the Georgia Tech Colorado game more. But this game, I'm telling you, man, Jackson Arnold didn't throw for a ton of yards, and I think they'll figure out that more as the year goes on, considering how good their receivers are. But, dude, he looked amazing on the ground. The kid is just super quick and, very rugged, took on the hits, was just smart with his running because he would slide as soon as he got the first down, very intelligently. He had 2 touchdowns on the ground. Sawyer Robertson looked good. It's just a lot of that came with, Auburn still in the lead for the most part. So, they were playing catch up a lot of times throughout the game. I don't know. This Auburn defense got gashed, for a lot of that yardage, but they were making plays. 307 yards on the ground is a massive effort. That is ridiculous right there. I think Auburn kind of found some things here. And then if you look what happened to Alabama, I think they're feeling really good about themselves, considering the shoe was on the other foot coming into the season. So Auburn is recruiting well. They're now playing well in these games. They're winning these games, and they won this pretty convincingly. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, with Auburn in this game, Jackson Arnold was kind of a Swiss Army knife. Clearly, he was used more in the run game than anything, and especially it's good to know that he still has the ability to scramble out of those sacks and that kind of stuff. And, he was playing it safe, getting the first down, and then finding the sticks and then sliding. What it boiled down to is that Baylor got very one-dimensional. Yes, Sawyer Robinson had a fantastic game. 400 yards is nothing to, turn an eye to. But like you said, it did come late in the game, and that Auburn defense shut that run game down from the very get-go. They were making sure they were not getting beat on the run, and they had the passing attack where, it was mostly man coverage that they were playing in that game, where Robinson was going to have to find a way to get it. And credit, he did find a way to get the ball to those receivers in very tight coverage. But that's what Auburn wanted, is to just be on the receivers like glue and try to find a way to stop them. Now, Baylor did try to mount a comeback, and they were, they got it close, but Auburn showed a bit of a clutch gene and was able to put the game away late in the game. All in all, very good win for Auburn. Big win for Hugh Freeze because this was not a layup game at all. You had to go on the road at Baylor on a Friday. It was not an easy one to pick up, but hey, Auburn gets the job done. And they can move forward. They are the, best Power 4 Alabama team right now.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Next game we have was the other Friday night game, Georgia Tech, Colorado. Outside of those 3 turnovers, this game should have been a blowout. Georgia Tech was moving the ball at will on these guys, and Haynes King had 156 yards on the ground, 143 through the air, 320 rushing yards. Colorado only had 159 passing yards and only 146 rushing yards. It was so one-sided that, I'm surprised the score was what it was, but because Georgia Tech had fallen behind the 8 ball with those turnovers, they went down 7-0. They got lucky because Colorado didn't score on those 2 other drives, but Georgia Tech stayed to their game plan and didn't turn the ball over the rest of the game and just flat out dominated. The worst part for Colorado, the rest of the game was like okay, but was really that 2-minute offense where there was like a minute
or lack thereof
30. Yeah, exactly. I've never seen anything more terrible than that. It was like, a short pass to the right, dump off to the running back that went nowhere, that I think was inbounds. I can't remember for sure. And then there was a quarterback drop back, looking for pass, nowhere to go, doesn't throw it away, then tries to run, but then is running sideways, running to try to get out of bounds. He wasted like at least 10 seconds doing all that. It was just comical how bad it was. And, I saw at one point Dion at the Hail Mary throw just took his headphones off. He was like, yeah, he basically gave up. And I know it was the last play, but still it's like, if you score, then you're going to overtime. You're going to need your headphones. But I don't know. I guess just the hype. That's what is ridiculous. And it's the hype with Arch Manning. It goes both ways. It goes for every way. Like when the media hypes up these players and they don't live up to it, it just really is like, I don't know. I think the media deserves a lot of the fault here. Not Dion. Like I know he's brash, whatever. That's just who he is. He's been brash since the 80s. Like everyone knows who he is, but it's really the media that falls for this junk and that puts it out there and like hypes up stuff. And it's like, come on, man. Like, let's be reasonable here. Let's use logic. And, I think going forward, people will be a little bit more realistic here. There's not a lot of playmakers on Colorado's offense. It's a surprise that Julian Lewis didn't win the starting quarterback job. So they're kind of stuck with the guy that they have who didn't look great. Defense got gashed. They have a lot of tough Big 12 games. So good luck the rest of the year. I'm envisioning a 6-6 year at best. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, not the microcosm of the game was the lack of a 2-minute drive, because it wasn't just that they were wasting time. They still had 2 timeouts and they were just looking at the sideline with no urgency, like waiting for the play calls. I'm literally I was watching the game on the TV and I almost screamed call time out. You don't have time to waste here. And you had to, the whole point of a 2-minute drill, in my opinion, when you're in a 2-minute drill, Hail Mary is literally in the name. You want to avoid having to do that. You need to get those, out routes, get those 10, 15-yard passes, get as close as you can to the end zone to actually run a play instead of just go deep and we're going to play, who could come, we're going to do a bouquet toss is what we're doing. And that's essentially what Colorado was trying to do. They were just trying to get it into arm strength range for Salter. And I just didn't understand that. I will give Georgia Tech its props, though. Yes, they got very lucky because those turnovers were very bad, and they will get bit later in the year against the other teams they play. But, yeah, Haynes Kane, dude, whatever it comes down to a big play, he's either going to beat you in the air or beat you with his legs. He finds a way to get in the end zone, and that 40-yard run was absolutely incredible. That essentially just, knocked Colorado out of the game. But Tech probably should have won by more, and it was just kind of frustrating because it was come on, man, just call your timeouts. You can't, they don't carry over to the next game. You might as well use them.
Dude, ridiculous. I didn't even mention how they just refuse to use timeouts. Why? You got to use this calculated. And it's considering how many people are on the sidelines for Colorado with whatever going on, you would think he has someone watching the clock and doing the analytics on that stuff. Because I know other teams have someone on staff that does that. And now there's there aren't limitations on the staff. You need someone like that in your ear. Hey, you should call a timeout here. That's what you should be doing. And it was just so bumbled and fumbled. It just looked ridiculous. It was come on, man. I don't know. whatever. I'm done talking about it. Let's move on to next game we have, which is Syracuse, Tennessee. Tennessee, defensively looked really good for a lot of this, but they still gave up a lot of yards overall. So they weren't great defensively, but they were opportunistic early on. They made some stops and then built up a big enough lead, 17-0, that it was really kind of hard for Syracuse to overcome. They got a was a fumble return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
I remember. And then they got another turnover on inside the 20 of Syracuse, and they capitalized on that really quick. So it was like 2 turnovers turned into 14 points, basically the difference in this game. Aguilar looked really good. He had a deep bomb to who was that?
Was it Staley?
I think so, because it was like a 70-yard pass. I think it was Staley because it was a touchdown. Yeah, it was Staley. And, he looked good. He ran the ball quite well, for a guy that is not known for being a huge runner. And, 16 to 28, 247. So that's pretty good numbers, 3 TDs. I think Tennessee is a lot better off than we thought. I think a lot of people were burying him coming into the game. It also depends on a lot with these things. Is like, how is the quarterback going to play? Coming into it, we didn't know what to expect out of Aguilar. He is known for turning the ball over, so that did not really happen this game for the most part. I think there was a fumble lost at one point.
Yeah, he fumbled.
Yeah, so that was the one thing, but he didn't have interceptions, which that will be a huge thing to keep track of going forward. Your thoughts on this game, Ian?
So Aguilar definitely had a great game, almost 250 yards and the 3 touchdown passes. But what I was most impressed with was the running attack that Tennessee, especially since Heupel's been there, has been very hyped around the passing, the wide receivers, and they definitely showed out today. But they had almost 250 yards rushing combined, and watching that, they were just gashing Syracuse's defense.
Yeah.
There was very little I can't really remember too many times where the running backs were tackled for loss the whole game.
Right.
And there were usually 6-7 yard carries. If I remember, it was everybody, it was an average of 6 yards per carry, which is phenomenal for a rushing attack. That was the thing that was the most impressive. And the defense did very good. I would say, they let their foot off the pedal probably in the second half because they were, I believe they were up 38-14 at one point in the third. So Syracuse, they tried to come back. They scored 2 touchdowns, but in the end, Tennessee, there was just too much distance between the two. And especially when you're running the ball that well, that's even harder to come back to as the opposing team. Because it's one thing when they have to pass it, because if it's incomplete, you stop the clock. They can still run on you for 5-6 yards, be in 2nd and 4, then 3rd and manageable, and that clock's still bleeding. So, very good win for Tennessee. If they can have that same rushing attack to complement the passing game, they're going to be tough to stop.
Yeah, I think Syracuse defense was kind of lacking to best way to describe it. They were, not making plays on in the ground game against Tennessee. So Tennessee was able to, like you said, gash them, and that really opened up the passing attack. And that's, like you said, if they're able to do that, they're going to be able to do that play action pass, which is a staple of Heupel's offense. And they're going to be putting up huge numbers against people. And it's really, with Heupel's offense, it's more the explosives. It's yes, success rate, but it's they just are able to score really quickly, and they can score 70, 80-yard touchdowns like Aguilar did with the one guy, the receiver. So again, this Tennessee team is definitely not dead, and we're going to see more from them in the coming weeks because they have a tough schedule right away. They play Georgia really quick. Okay. The big game of the day, Texas, Ohio State. There was a lot coming into this game. You had Arch Manning with his first real start, or first like big time start on the road in the horseshoe against the defending champion, a rematch of the Final Four game last year where it was close. Both defenses looked great. I was kind of suspect of Matt Patricia and the losses on returning on Ohio State's defense, but they looked great. Honestly, they kept Texas in check. The run game was kind of limited. Arch Manning looked pedestrian at best. This game was really decided on the fact that Arch could not really get in a flow. Seemed like he was throwing passes short of the sticks. Seemed like he couldn't really complete the deep passes that would get up huge chunk yards. Really like a check down Charlie guy. He, was just I'm not impressed. And this was supposed to be his Heisman coming out party, and it looked like, it was the end of it. I tweeted out, and I saw someone else tweet it. I think it was Barstool, where it was like Arch Manning Heisman campaign, and then it was like the Aaron Rodgers staring at the flag.
Went out with
yeah. So it was like, it really was like that. It was like, oh, so crazy. I mean, they had Tom Rinaldi at the beginning of the game hyping it up and like doing his little shtick of oh, this could be a feel good story and blah 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 and all this. And it's like, yeah, come on. I mean, I get it. We were just looking for stories to tell, but at the same time, can we be more, I guess, objective with how we're doing things? I guess, it's with the Manning family. It's a PR thing. They're a PR machine. You see them out on all these commercials and TV shows and oh, they're so amazing, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I mean, I've heard some stories about Peyton that are not great. So, it is what it is, but this kid will probably recover. But I mean, I saw a lot of people being very negative on his mechanics, his throwing arm, his footwork. So we'll see. I think Ohio State did enough in this game to win, which, granted, it didn't look amazing. They really didn't put up a ton of yards. Jeremiah Smith dropped a couple in the beginning, which he should have had. I mean, they only had 203 yards, but granted, Texas's defense looked amazing. So Texas will be back the rest of this year because of their defense. It's just going to be, can Arch really recover? Ohio State, offensively, they're going to need more the rest of the year. They're going to play some tough defenses, Michigan and Penn State. So they're going to really have to figure that out a little bit. I guess Julian saying, Belo with a grand slam. Yes.
Oh, Razor on?
Today's game,
good.
Yeah. Nice. Love it. So Julian Sayin is going to have to get better. He only had 126 yards passing. It's definitely something that they're going to have to work on, getting him in a flow. But like I said, tough defense, best case scenario, they've limited here. He'll grow into it more. He's very talented, high 5-star coming out of high school. So your thoughts, Ian, on this big time game?
Yeah, and I'm going to switch gears here because there was a lot of talk about the offenses and stuff. I will give flowers where flowers are due. Both defenses played extremely well. I will say that. Ohio State, obviously, they were really rattling Manning. That was the thing. Manning's footwork, he was very skittish. He was very, trying to, kind of sidearm the ball in there and force it in there. And that's exactly what Ohio State wanted to do. But on the other side, Texas's defense did a very good job limiting the run game and making sure they were not beaten by Jeremiah Smith or the speed of the wide receivers. Yeah. Carnell Tate and, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate did have a big touchdown. but there was very few times where Texas just straight up got beat. Cardinal Tate's catch too was absolutely insane. That was like, what do you want the defender to do there? It's like it literally hit off his leg and he caught it twice. There's nothing more you can do for that. So I'm going to give praise there. The defense is both quite solid. There's at least one thing to take away from that, especially for Texas, is that the defense still looked very good. They didn't allow, I think, total in the game, it was under like a little over 200 yards. Texas was able to get over 300 yards, but they weren't able to capitalize. And once again, they got stoned in the goal line. It was a yard to go. They tried to sneak it in. And, you know, I'm sure Texas fans were getting PTSD from last year when they got held up there. But that just goes to credit to Ohio State. You know, literally with inches to go, they held strong and they were able to push Texas back. Obviously huge win for Ohio State. I think they're the number one team now after that win. They had a real shot of actually like shutting out Texas. That's how good the defense was. Yeah. That was the thing. What I said was, Manning did not play good. His footwork was sloppy and he was like just really putting the balls in bad spots where the wide receivers had to jump, and, you know, he wasn't putting it where they could, you know, what was best for their routes.
Yeah.
But I still said, like, that's what Ohio State's defense wanted, and they got it done. And that's what I said. I was like, if that was what Ohio State was going to do to win the game, they had to make it a defensive struggle, and they got in Manning's face. They shut down the run game, and they forced, you know, Manning in his first start as the starter, tell him to beat us, and he couldn't right now. So great win for Ohio State. Texas, it's not the end of the world. It wasn't going to be the end of the world for either of these teams, especially the only way it would have been really bad if, say, like, it was like a 35-3 win for like either Texas or Ohio State. It's only a touchdown loss. It was a very good defensive struggle. Both teams have a lot to play for, but for Texas, there's a bit more pressure now because you got an SEC schedule, and that's not going to get any easier.
Yeah, for sure. So Ohio State had 203 total yards, and those fourth down conversions are non-conversions that they didn't convert were huge. That was basically the difference in the game. If they had converted, you know, the one on the goal line for the touchdown, or even like one other, they might have had a real shot of actually winning a game. So, I mean, they were close. Obviously, it was a one-score game, but no, it was a great game, and it did live up to the hype. It wasn't a huge scoring game, and I think I said that in the like preview that I thought it was going to be a low-scoring game, and it lived up to that. Both defenses are really stout. Okay, let's move on. The biggest surprise of the day, Alabama was coming in like a huge favorite. I think literally every person I know had predicted Alabama to win this game. I think the only person in like all of media was Lee Corso, and it's and it was like his like going away like fadeaway three shots.
Yeah,
like, I got this, and he drilled it, and he called it, and they won. And I tried watching most of the game. I had something going on yesterday that I couldn't pay attention to it the whole time, but I rewatched the recap, the condensed game, which I do love. ACC Network, shout out to them, ACC Digital Network, because they do condensed games for their football games, and they show all of the plays, and so you get a real like broad understanding, even if you can't watch the game on the YouTube highlights there. And it's 25 minutes usually. It's the full breadth of the game, so you get to actually watch the game, and without commercials, without all the fluff. It's pretty amazing. I wish every other conference did that, and even Power Group of 5 teams did it too. It would be nice. But regardless, in this game, Florida State pretty much dominated most of the game all the way through. I will say that Alabama did come back there at the end, and they had a shot. They were down 7. They couldn't get the stop, and Florida State kind of imposed their will in the run game. And that was the real tale of the tape. You know, Castellanos did not throw for a lot of yards. He had a couple of big plays, 9 for 14, but for the most part, it was a running attack, plan here. 230 yards on the ground. Castellanos had 78, I believe. And conversely, with Alabama, they couldn't run the ball at all. They definitely were missing Jam Miller. His him not being in the lineup there was huge. They needed a solid force in the game, and they really couldn't get it. I felt like Ty Simpson at times looked fine and was able to complete the passes. I felt like the scheme, play calling, they were open. I felt like there was plenty of times there were receivers open and the throws were just a little behind or over or under, and it wasn't accurate. 23 of 43, not really a great completion percentage. And Ryan Williams really did not show up in this game. He had 5 catches, but only 30 yards. Jeremy Bernard had a huge game. He had 8 catches for 146 yards. He looked great. He was just the only thing really going for Bama the whole game and kept them in it. This Bama team defensively, they looked lost. They looked like they couldn't cover a cold. They were just struggling in the run game. They couldn't pick up Castellanos. And then when they did, they would make a stupid play and commit a penalty. And then they would get, Florida State would get a first down because of it. So they really were lacking in the discipline area. 8 penalties for 70 yards. And then Florida State just did enough to get the 2-score lead, and they won. They stormed the field, and Florida State now, projection-wise for their season, it probably changes a lot of things. I still think they'll have tough games against Miami and Florida, and I think they play Clemson as well. So those are their 3 tough games. I don't know. They could lose one here against maybe an NC State or Va-Tech or Pitt. So I don't know if they go 2-2 against those big games, or 1-2 and or 3-0. They have a real shot of doing very well. So let's see. I still think they're probably going to lose to Clemson and Miami, and there's a good chance against Florida. So they could go 9-3, and that would be way better than last year when they were 2-10. Your thoughts, Ian?
I have a little song here for the Alabama program, so making sure you guys can hear it.
Yeah, here we go. Oh man, he's burying them. He's throwing the dirt on their grave.
It's one thing to, and I'm thinking it's unfair. I've always said this. It's unfair to compare Kalen DeBoer to Nick Saban, because it's literally like comparing, I don't know. It's an apples to oranges thing. It's Nick Saban is one of the greatest coaches of all time, and I'm not saying Kalen DeBoer isn't a great coach. It's just it's not going to be the same. It's it's not fair to do that. But the thing that was telling for me was, remember the times when Bama would lose under Saban? It would always come down to the last second. It would always be Bama was in the game the whole time. They were always tough to put away. I'm thinking of the last losses, when they lost to A&M, when they lost to obviously Michigan in the Rose Bowl, even the game against Ole Miss, both of them where they lost in Tuscaloosa. And that one, even when Ole Miss was running away with it, Bama was still, they were fighting the whole way. I have never seen Bama bullied like that against a team like Florida State. Now, like I said, I expected Florida State to be much better, but to have that defense, which has been the staple of the Alabama program literally since the 90s, to just completely crumble like that was absolutely unacceptable. Give credit where credit's due. Gus Malzahn, he's just the kryptonite for Alabama. He wrote the perfect scheme, was able to confuse with the motion and boot plays, either Castellanos on the play actions, they would have the line shift left, and then they would have the open receiver to the right or the tight end right, or they would just have Castellanos run it themselves. Bama didn't know what was going on defense. And when you can't stop anybody on defense, your offense has no hope of catching up. It was a very, very disappointing start to Bama, and there are serious concerns now because it was the statistic of Saban only lost a handful of, I think, 4 total against unranked teams, and like 2 of them or whatever were in his first year.
Yeah.
And Kalen DeBoer is already at that. He lost to Vandy. He lost a really bad Oklahoma team. And then he lost to a really bad Michigan team in the Outback Bowl, or whatever they're calling it now. And now he lost to Florida State, who just went 2-10. There is going to be some interesting discussions in Tuscaloosa, especially with that fan base that has had championship after championship and expects that every year, to now starting off 0-1 against Florida State and not only losing but getting beaten, just flat out. Bama had one good drive where they looked like the better team, and after that, for the rest 55 minutes, it was Florida State's game. So give credit where credit's due. As much as I hate them, Florida State was the better team. They played better. That was a huge win for Mike Norvell in that program. A much-needed win. I do not blame those fans rushing the field, because after getting denied from the playoff and then going 2-10, they needed something to cheer for, and they certainly got it in an absolute face-kicking on Alabama. And for Alabama, I mean, there's going to have to be some serious discussions and internal soul-searching to figure out how good is this team. Because if they're not going to beat Florida State on the road, how are they going to do against Georgia on the road?
Yeah, that's true. Those 4th down conversions were really, the difference in the game, because, if you saw that one where Ty Simpson, he's rolling to the left, he got away from the pressure, and he has the first down.
He just needs to run.
He just doesn't.
He just has to run.
Yeah, he just needs to take the down, or I mean the yard marker, get the first down, but he decides to throw it, and it's like, why, dude? There was like no one in front of you. You clearly had the first down if you just run. And I think, again, he hasn't played in a lot of these big time games yet, so it's not fair to him because he's had limited action in the several years that he's been there. It would have been nice if he just had like a Long Island like Florida had, and he could have eased into the season. But they didn't, and they had a tough game on the road in Tallahassee when FSU was christening the upgrades of the stadium. So there was a lot of buzz at the stadium, and they changed the offense, and Castellanos come in, and Gus Malzahn is, running the ball all over the place. I just feel like, going forward, I'm not burying Bama just yet. I think everyone wants to, because I think it's like, coming after a legend is very difficult. I think there's talent there in Bama. The defense, against a running quarterback struggled, but I think if the offense was playing better, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal. They would have still been able to stay in the game, but the offense struggled. They weren't able to convert those 4th downs. They struggled on 3rd down, 6 of 17. And, if they score even, 2 more scores, this game's a completely different game, and they might even have been able to win it. So I think going forward, they'll probably be fine. They have some games that they can win out against some bad teams, but they do have Georgia really quick. I think Georgia is the 3rd game after these next 2. They should be able to beat Wisconsin, Louisiana Monroe. Both those games are at home. So maybe they figure things out. They're not dead yet. It's a long season. A loss on the road to a Power 4 team is not the end of the world. Okay, let's move on to Texas A&M, UTSA. I'm not going to stay on this one long. Texas A&M defensively, what they're known for, and they looked, I don't know, their defense did not look good in this game. They gave up a ton of yards from Robert Henry Jr. from UTSA. He had 177 on the ground. Marcel Reed looked good. He had 289 through the air, 4 TDs. They kind of struggled in the run game a little bit. but they kind of, you know, ran them out of the building eventually. But I don't know. This doesn't look good as far as defense if they're giving up this much yards to, a power group of 5 team that is not a top tier power group of 5 team. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, at least with A&M, the offense kind of like they did like some body swap thing where the offense was the one that shelled out and the defense kind of was lackluster. Now they did get up to it was like 42-17 in the fourth quarter, so this game was never in doubt. But yeah, giving up almost 400 yards to UTSA, especially on the ground, that's concerning considering how many good running backs are in the SEC. But Marcel Reed looked great. If the offense can keep that up, they're going to be a tough one to stop. But yeah, defensively, they're going to need to find some adjustments moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, they have a tough schedule, so we'll see how they actually do against real teams. But, with this game, you're not really going to know truly until you see the better teams on your schedule how good the defense is going to be. But it did not look good here. Okay, moving on. Here we go. All right. So there's been a lot of hype about Florida coming into this year. We did the season preview talking about where we think they're going to be. The schedule is daunting, obviously, but this game set itself up to be basically a glorified practice, which it was because Long Island only was able to muster up 86 total yards, which is pretty paltry and sad. They had 2 first downs, 1 third down conversion. And Florida just dominated. Defensively, that honestly is the great sign. They had no penalties and didn't give up a score, shut them out. They recovered 2 fumbles. Bryce Thornton recovered both of them. Bryce Thornton had a fumble return for a touchdown. DJ Lagway looked okay to start the game. He got better as the game went on. He looked more and more comfortable. The star of the game and the star that will probably dominate the storyline for this year for Florida is none other than Trey Vernell Brown III. I mean, this kid already had the catch of the year in the first game of the year, and he looked amazing on punt return. I'm going to say it, and I already tweeted it out. There was another guy at Florida that played wide receiver who wore number 8 his freshman year, and it looks a lot like that guy in a lot of ways, and I'm really excited to see what he does because he is elusive. He, can get away from people. He's super shifty. He's super fast. He's got great hands. 3 catches for 79 yards. Punt returning was amazing. I mean, this kid is a huge star in the making. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about because this game, LIU's capacity was at 6,000 and the Swamp is like 90,000. So it was literally night and day with the programs. But I will say, yeah, the wide receiver core was really good. Vernell Brown did, obviously, with that catch was freaking insane. The other thing to note, too, is that Aiden Menzel and Dallas Wilson were out this game. So they didn't even have, that wasn't even their full complement of dangerous receivers. And Eugene Wilson was kind of held in check.
Right.
But they didn't really need to pass the ball. Jaden Ball, I thought, had a very impressive game.
Yep.
He was averaging, I think it was 11 yards per carry. Nobody was tackling him.
Yeah.
And he would just run through the O-line and find the open hole. So that was a very good start. Yeah, and obviously the main focus was Lagway. At the start, it wasn't perfect. He definitely was stretching a lot of passes. There was a lot of guys he had open deep that usually he would hit, and he just flat out missed them. So that is one area where I know hopefully he better, get under control because that's what Florida's going to need to get this offense moving is they're going to need his arm. The other thing, too, that I thought was a bit interesting and maybe a level of concern was that the O-line was kind of getting pushed around a bit.
Yeah.
And luckily, like I said, when you have a guy like Jaden Ball, kind of a tough guy to bring down, but Lagway got sacked a couple of times, and yeah, they especially in the red zone and in the 5 to go near the goal line, there were times where they just got stuffed, and I'm thinking, man, against LIU, that's not the best sign. So the two areas of concern for me, at least coming out of this, and I mean, like, they won 55-0. So I mean, like, not the biggest concern, but I would say like the O-line needs to be more firm, and Lagway needs to be more accurate on those deep passes, which I'm sure they will and need to address. But all in all, good win for the Gators. Good way to start the year. And yeah, like I said, hopefully they could just continue forward, because it's not going to get any easier, because USF's coming to town next week, and they showed, what they can do against a team like Boise State. While Florida, I think, has better talent, they only won by a field goal last time, and that USF team was terrible.
Yeah,
the last time they played.
The talent on Florida's team was not that great that last time too. The recruiting that Dan Mullen had left over was suspect. But no, the one thing that I did want to point out that we didn't mention was Trey Smack had a really subpar game. He was what
2 for 5.
2 for 5. He all of last year had missed only 3 field goals, so he missed his season's worth of field goals in one game, which was not a good sign. But I think they'll be all right. Linebackers for Florida, Miles Graham, Jaden Robinson look good. They didn't give up much, but again, LIU is not a good team, so it's not much to really like show until we'll see next week. We'll talk about USF Florida on Wednesday. I kind of want to keep that in check until we like really dive deep, because I'm going to use that as the very last segment of the show on Wednesday. So we'll do like a very long show. Plus we have our guest coming on for Wednesday, Seth. God, how to say Seth's last name? Starts with a V. Seth Vanderen. I think that's how you say it. Let me see. I got it right here. Seth Varnador. I hope that I'm saying that right, Seth. And I'll ask you when we do the show or when we do the interview in a couple of days, what it is. But no, so we'll have Seth on. He's a USF and Florida fan as well. So all three of us are, and it'll be interesting to talk about. I think we can be as objective as possible with our analysis there. Okay, let's move on to USC, Missouri. Missouri State. We'll do this one really quick. It's another one of these bad teams, so it's tough to really see how good you are. Jaden Mayava looked great. Only had 3 incompletions, 295 yards. The run game for USC looked really good. They were huge chunk plays, guys averaging over 6 yards a carry, almost every one of them. They had a lot of huge explosive plays from everybody, from tight ends to running backs. They just feasted. They had defensive scores. 73-13 was the final score. Just a beat down. Not much really to tell from these games. It is what it is. Basically glorified practice like Florida's. But they looked very good. Lane and Lemon, were studs in this game again. They looked great. Eli Sanders, like I said, running back, had a huge play. Just it is what it is. They're going to look forward to these coming games, and this one's out of the way. And next they'll have Georgia Southern, so they should win that one easily. Then they'll have Purdue, which should be a tough game, but I think they'll win. And then they have Michigan State before finally Illinois. So kind of a easy road into the season to start, get some hype up, get Jaden comfortable, and then we'll see from there. Ian, your thoughts on this game?
I would say it's very rude because Delaware, the other Division I team that just jumped to Division I FBS, got to play Delaware State their first game.
Yeah.
How is that fair to give Missouri State their first game as a Division I USC? At least Delaware, they play Colorado next week. Okay, fine. You're gonna give Missouri State USC their first Division I game? That's pretty whoever's in charge of the schedule was a jerk.
Yeah.
But yeah, same thing. USC, they took care of business. 70 points is obviously fantastic. Defense held, forced 3 turnovers. That was really good to see. And Mayava, fantastic game. I think I only had 3 incompletions the whole game.
Yeah.
So all in all, great game for the Trojans. Good start, and they can build on this moving forward.
Okay, moving on to, I'd say probably the best game of the day. This was a close game, and it was fun to watch. LSU Clemson. This was a true playoff future preview game, because both these teams have great quarterbacks, have great defenses, and LSU, for years has struggled defensively, but they seem to really turn the corner in this game, and they played really well defensively. They, stuffed Clemson for, I think it was 31 rushing yards, which is ridiculous. Klubnik still had a decent game, but I think LSU did a good job of limiting him, really taking advantage of them. And so you'll see going forward, LSU had a lot of hype before the game, and now, winning this game on the road in Death Valley, this is a huge win for them, because, they lost the last 5 years, their season opener, all the way back to 2019 when they won the national championship. So it had been a long time since they won a season opener, and to get this win, to get that monkey off his back, Brian Kelly now is a huge foot in the right direction to really, make something of this season. I think they can, but we'll see a huge matchup with Florida in week 3. So, this LSU team has a lot to play for. This Clemson team is not dead. This is a non-conference game. They still have a lot to play for in the ACC. They're more than likely will be one of the better teams there. They should compete with both Miami, Florida State, and Georgia Tech for the crown, and SMU. This was a great game. It was fun. There was a lot of big time plays, some controversy with some replays. There was some turnovers that were very timely. This game was interesting. It lived up to the hype. I know a lot of people had hyped this one, probably more so than any other game outside of Texas, Ohio State, and it lived up to it. Both games. I know low scoring games don't really excite people a ton, but when you have good teams, you might have a chance at low scoring games, especially when the defenses are really good, which in this case they really were. And it's credit to both of them and their staffs. They had them playing really well. They didn't have a ton of penalties. Both had 6 apiece, but just a great game to watch. What were your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, this one was it definitely felt like a playoff game, and especially with all the preseason chatter, LSU was wearing 1-0 t-shirts, and who had the real Death Valley, all that kind of stuff. It was definitely Brian Kelly's toughest opening game, because all the other ones were at neutral sites.
Yeah.
And that's what I was worried about, was if he can't win on neutral sites, now he's got to go into Clemson and win it. But he did, and LSU just played keep away. They knew that offense was their bread and butter. And they knew if they could stop the run game, they were going to have to force Klubnik to pass, which for a lot of teams, that sounds like a great game plan, but Klubnik is a really good quarterback. But that secondary held those receivers in check. Klubnik did throw an interception. Luckily didn't get bit too hard off of it. But, yeah, they made it very one-dimensional in the passing game. They didn't really get beat deep a lot. And that was the main concern, is we know Klubnik can do that. He did it all last year. He did it to Pitt by himself last year. But yeah, LSU's defense played fantastic, and the offense was able to, really grind and pound. Nussmeier had, I believe, 230 yards, and he threw a touchdown as well. Very accurate. They made the passing game plan very simple, and a lot of out routes, and let the wide receivers, go from there. But yeah, like I said, fantastic job by LSU going into Death Valley, Clemson Death Valley, and blocking out the noise, finding a way to get those stops, especially at the last second. They were really getting to Klubnik and trying to make him uncomfortable. And even then, it didn't work. There were still times he got hit and was able to complete the pass for 10 yards. But they did everything they could, and they got the stops they needed and gave Clemson as little time as possible to tie it and try to jump ahead of them.
Yeah, I mean, the game was like they were up 10-3, and it felt like they were taking control at some points, but then like LSU just kept coming after them and just kept making plays. They didn't like have a ton of explosive plays, but they made enough plays to move the chains, to get down the field, and to get those last 2 touchdowns and really solidify themselves there. And this LSU team, I will say, it looks legit. Like, it looks like a definitely at least a playoff team, and potentially an SEC championship caliber, and maybe even a national championship caliber team. Because Nussmeier is a really good quarterback, and he's projected to go really high in the draft, and I can definitely see it. Let's move on to the last game here. Dude, this was pathetic. But I will say, with this UCLA-Utah game, Utah looked just the better team, and I think that's really the difference. And I think Utah is going to be, a potential Big 12 champion. And so, there's nothing to really be upset about with UCLA, because they struggled on offense. Nico looked very inaccurate. But again, I was listening to a Utah podcast the other day, and he brought up the point that Nico had not really been with the team that much, and then it might be a problem. And it was. It really was. They didn't look in sync. He looked off with his receivers. The timing was off. So, until he gets that level of practice, hopefully they figure stuff out in the coming days and really try to correct the ship. They struggled to run the ball. And conversely, Utah dominated them on the ground. There are 6 players with Utah that was able to average over 5 yards a carry, which is insane. And they had 286 yards on the ground. Third down conversions, they were 14 of 17, 1 of 1 on fourth downs, 30 first downs total. They punted the ball only 3 times. They had no turnovers. They had the ball 37 minutes compared to UCLA's 22. This was a domination from beginning to end. I think they were up 20-0 at one point, and UCLA just never got in this game, and they struggled immensely to really even put up the 10. But I will say the scheme that Sunseri had to get people open for the receivers looked like it was working. There were some times when there were people open and just Nico failed to get it to him. There was a lot of times where Nico just pulled off and ran the ball, and that was a lot of what their offense was for most of it, was just him running for first downs. But defensively, they could not stop the run game. And, for Utah, their quarterback, Dampier, he didn't have a huge yardage game, but he was very accurate, 21 of 25, and did enough in the air game to really dominate them. And he had 87 yards on the ground, and really it was just because they had such a crazy ground attack, they couldn't do anything, and UCLA just struggled defensively as well. Your thoughts, Ian, on this last one?
Yeah. The most telling sign of this game was how many 3rd and 1 situations UCLA was in compared to Utah. Utah, I think, went 14 for 16 on 3rd down conversions because they were on 3rd and manageable situations, which is insane. One, that's poor defense, because regardless, you got to not give up 14 3rd down conversions. You're going to lose every game like that. And 2, for UCLA, they were always trying to go for the big play, it looked like. Which, yeah. I don't know if that was what Imaliava wanted or if that was what the scheme was, but there are times I say the best offense is where you just keep going forward. You don't need to get a first down every play. It helps, but it's not likely going to happen. So they were really stuck in the mud because there's a lot of 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 situations where you're really making it obvious you're going to have to throw the ball. And especially with the rushing attack that wasn't working. But yeah, getting almost doubled in yardage is very concerning for UCLA. Utah had a fantastic game, just ran up and down the field. They had the ball the whole time and just never gave UCLA any hope of getting into the game. But great win for the Utes. Really rough start for Maliava and UCLA. I know Tennessee fans are happy after that game. And yeah, the only other thing I'll say is RIP Pac-12 after dark, because I had to catch myself. I was like, oh yeah, this is the Pac-12, and I went, oh wait, yeah, the UCLA's in the Big Ten and Utah's in the Big 12. Yeah, crazy times we live in.
Yeah. So this game, UCLA just, burn this game, burn the tape, and learn from it. And there's still a lot to like there. I think they can recover. This isn't the end of the world. Again, playing a tough Utah team that more than likely will be playing for a Big 12 championship and a potential playoff spot is not a terrible thing. You're going to get beat by good teams, especially when your quarterback missed all of spring and struggled to get on the page with the receivers. So let's move on. Oh, that's it, actually. Sorry. So, again, catch us every Sunday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, on all the formats. You can catch us at our website, haterradio.com, for all of our articles. I'll probably have one on the USF Florida game that I'll write in the coming days. And then, me and Ian will be in Gainesville for the game. So any USF Florida fans, look for us. Ian is going to be wearing what? I'm excited
Florida.
to see what Ian. What?
Florida.
I knew it. I knew you were going to do that. I'm going to be wearing my Hater Radio shirt and a Tampa Bay Rays hat. So I'm going to try to stay as neutral as I can. But look for us. I'm going to try to get some footage. I'm sure me and Ian will be out there chopping it up. But reach us on all of our socials as well. Look up Hater Radio. You can find us there. Ian's new handle is not the one there, so we're going to have to change that. But Ian's new handle is G5_Gibson for him. Ian, anything else before we go?
No, I'm just glad we're back in the saddle. We still have 2 games. We got Vodtech in South Carolina. Get to see Lenore Sellers and drones at Vodtech, 2 mobile quarterbacks. That'll be fun. And then we get Catholics versus Convicts and the night tonight. Always a great game. And then, we see Bill Belichick's debut tomorrow against TCU. So really good way to end Labor Day.
Yeah, I'm excited. It should be, honestly, it's a great way to end the weekend and to start the college football year. This has been a tremendous start. So many good games. I was wrong on a lot of these because I predicted Texas, Bama, and Clemson to win, and none of them won. But I did pick USF, which not many people were picking USF. So I feel good about that. And, it is what it is. There's going to be a lot of games you get wrong. It's just the business of analysis. You're not exactly going to be right 100% of the time because, God, the Rays are falling apart here. I don't know why this guy is still pitching. They were up 7-1, and now it's 7-4, and it's just pathetic. But anyways, ending the show. We'll talk to you guys on Wednesday, and look for our interview with Seth about the USF football game. All right, take care, y'all.